Now you guys might be laughing at this because you probably know a better way of doing something that I haven't figured out yet. But unless you play with a piece of metal and work with it for a while, well, you don't learn. So well, would you look at that? There we go. So by rolling this leg over, I just minimized how many ripples and bumps I had through here. And the panel just relieved itself, bad choice of words, and it straightened itself, or it curved itself around. But not as much as we need to. Okay, let's flatten this back out. See, panel is straightened back out. See, automotive manufacturers have big presses, and within seconds the panel's done. Boom, finished. We're getting closer. What I'm going to do is flip this over, get this curvature to where we need it, and then when I'm sighting it through from the other side, I have a guide to go by. Let's go throw this up in the car and I'll show you where we're sitting with this panel on this side. We still have a long way to go over here. Our little spacer fell out, but I'm not worried about that right now. Place it on top. Okay, and as you can see, well, I'm not holding it, but we have a nice consistent edge all the way along. A little bit of something there on the driver's side, but overall the curve is where it has to be. So with that curved around, we can now focus on this top and see how much we can get that to curve. So we've got the buckle still happening here, but we're getting a curve through here, which is a good thing. I don't want to stretch the outside. I've mentioned that several times already, but don't want to stretch this out too much. Well, that helped a lot. This little depression here got a little bit smaller, and we've gotten more curvature throughout the panel, almost matching what we have here. I'm going to take and roll this over again and see how much that comes up. Okay, I just have enough tension to hold the panel in the wheel, and I'm rolling it over. Over the lower anvil. And see, that's eating up material right there. I don't want to do this too fast. I want the buckles to kind of fall into place on their own. Okay. Believe it or not, we are just about there with that panel. Well, you can believe it because you can see the curve. Except for about 8 inches from each end, that panel is sitting on the rear deck perfectly. Now it's sitting backwards, so we're gonna have to obviously turn it around when we install it, but I'm just matching up the curvature to the rear deck. And what we're gonna do is take and flatten that flange out that we just bent, stand it back up, clean up those, the little bit of damage created by the pin, take and reel the ends, bring the ends down, and at that point roll that flange back over, adjust it with the kick string for a little bit, and it should fit to the car. So what I'm going to do now is unroll that flange that we just so painstakingly stood up, and flatten it back out again. Now every time you roll a flange, you do stretch material to a degree, but in this case I can't really help it. I've minimized the pressure between the anvils, and right now I'm just pulling it over. So right now we need to take these ends and just bring them down on both sides here, and the panel should fit. It should fit better, I should say, because it fits now, but in terms of how well it fits, you still need to work that out. So the only thing left is a little scratch that runs down the panel about 3/4 inch in from this edge left by that pin. The little gouge that was there, the V in the metal, is gone. Now I'm going to take and stretch just along the bend line. Not the bend line, but just below the bend line. Oh, that's looking good. Now we have a buckle there, but if you remember what happened before, when we stood that leg up, that buckle disappeared. And what we do on one side, we got to do to the other side. Unlike a Band-Aid when you pull it off, you take your time with this. So there's a bit of a buckle happening here that's caused by this depression here. It's too much material. It's pushed down, pushing that out. When this rolls over, that bump will come up, and this will turn into a nice straight line. With this edge cleaned up, we can now roll that over again. Just some light pressure and some gentle force to tip it over, and let the panel tip itself. I'm just applying a little bit of pressure here. Don't know how to explain it, but the panel just kind of, see, I'm pushing, I'm pushing a ripple, and then the ripple just relieved itself and it fell over. If you push through it too hard, you'll create a kink, and then you got more work. Try and rectify that kink. We've got our curvature, and it's matching the one at the back we did earlier. But unfortunately, we have a bit of waviness happening here. When we stand that up to meet the body line, that's going to correct some of it. But I'll pass it through the kick shrinker and just tighten it up a bit. And if you can see, we have a dent right here, which is pushing the material upwards. So let's take and bump that out from the inside with a shoemaker or a flat face hammer or a slapper, whatever, and just see if we can pull that down without wheeling it. Might be hard to see for you guys. You can see there's a bit of deflection in material there. So I'm taking and bump that out, and hopefully that comes up. And I can see the contact of the slapper, a bit more shiny here. So it's doing its job. Throw it up here backwards, and curvature, a second here. This end rolled a little bit, there. There. Stand this face up here, or this flange up to meet up with that rear panel. It is a bit long, I'll shrink it in a minute. There we go. My hand was covering it for you guys. So just the end is sticking up a little bit. We can't have the angle of these hinges, or these hinges on an angle, otherwise it'll bind the pin. So the curvature matches everything perfectly to about here. And then when it comes into this panel is going to be flat, and to incorporate those hinge mounting points. So we've just accomplished what I thought was almost an impossible goal. And well, there we go. Flip this around. It's going to sit right in there. Actually a bit lower. We'll take and tighten that front edge up. And that's it. Now these corners, we're going to take and cut them and blend them into the side panels and make it all pretty. And put it on screws and work our way back. Okay, that's going to be it for that. Well guys, I've given up and I've decided to weld this trunk lid to the body. See the tacks here? I've welded these side pieces, these side structural pieces, to the quarter panels temporarily. If we rely on the clamps to hold them in place, eventually, well, first of all, this configuration for the seal area is very complicated. And if we get the spacers in there and manage to have the clamps hold it in place, by the time I'm done all the hammering I need to do on this to bring the corners in and smooth everything out, those clamps will become loose and we'll lose the orientation of this structure in relation to the body. So a few quick tacks solve that problem. Now you might be wondering, what about the rubber seal? And yes, we're gonna have a rubber seal in here, which is gonna add some space between the two areas. If you notice, the top flange is kind of angled upward. So to give us a space through here, later on we'll take and roll that down. That'll lift the front of the structure up. This will come up and we'll have enough space for the rubber seal. Just a temporary means of holding things in place for us. Extra set of hands. Right now what I have to work on is creating some structure around that hinge. If we just say, let's bolt it to this sheet metal and forget about it and put the skin on, well, the body, the trunk will never align to the body, first of all, once it's all done. It'll always shift one way or another because the hinges are going to flex on those sheet metal areas. And after enough flexing, that sheet metal is going to crack. And we don't want that. So I'm going to take and form up some channels, drill some holes, add some nuts, get it in place, and we'll bolt the hinges to those structural pieces. And that'll distribute the force of those hinges over the sheet metal. And then later on, we'll also create some beading through here and make it all pretty. So I'm going to be working on that. And if you don't mind, can you hold this tape for me? Thanks. Okay, so here we have our brackets, and we've got the holes drilled for the spot welds later on. We'll also have to disassemble this and prime the two surfaces in between with epoxy primer because I don't want any rust seeping out of this area. Later on, we'll have to form up these corners, get them installed. This leg is tied up against the body. We're going to take and step back 1/4 inch and trim that off. And the reason I say 1/4 is because when you take and roll over the sheet metal, that'll take up that little distance and we'll end up with 3/16 at the end. Do you think we should open it, see how it looks, how it works? There will be quite a bit of flex on this. So cylinders I put in, the lighter ones, so just imagine if I kept the original ones with all the power. You see how much that sprung up. Okay. All right, let's see if this opens. Now, that will have to be cut back. I think that pose a problem already. Not bad up to there. I can see daylight through there. But as soon as we go up any more than this, it's starting to bind up in through here. Now, this is where you can turn the cameras off. Just debating first thing I should do. Take and cut that front edge off. That'll help us a lot because you can't have it binding tight right away. And then if you recall earlier, I mentioned the whole deck lid has to be lifted up about 5/8 of an inch for the rubber seal. Okay, now you see here, this side leg, it's only on screws, so it's flexing. So that's not a good thing there. We're gonna have to take and torque it down afterwards and weld everything with it torqued down. What else is going on here? Let's open this up again. So by lifting the deck lid up, you know what? By lifting the deck lid up 5/8 of an inch, it's going to alleviate our problem. Because I know my dad would have tested that out to make sure that that didn't bind. And that's what's happening right now. Didn't count on the deck lid being this low. All right, so we're going to get this off the car, outline all the beads we have to make the beads, reassemble it, and at that point, I think we can start tacking it because right now, this is really, really floppy. And that's grinding, so, okay. That's the plan, guys. Let's see if we can get it done. It's part of the game of building a car. Assemble, reassemble, tear it apart, reassemble. Need to have a lot of patience. All right. Just sketching it right now. I want to see what might look good. And then we'll take and pull templates off one side, flip everything over. Okay, it's gonna look good. So, a bit of a design up and through here. Do the same thing down there. Kind of do the opposite effect though. And have to make a template of that side, transpose it over here, get this side done, take it all apart, and then we'll start wheeling it out, or tipping it out, if you will. You need to set the distance, the offset distance, lock everything in. It's going to look good. Just a gentle offset. Okay. Touch it up a little bit wherever we need to. That's looking good right there. Can't breathe too much when you're doing this, especially if you want them straight. You really only have one chance to get things right. Let's back up a little bit and make it right. No, just blending in the start and stop. So there we go. First one created. We'll get all this wiped off afterwards. I don't want to wipe it and then have to recoat everything. Still using the original oil that came with the panel. That's why sometimes you see my panels, I'll leave the Sharpie on there until we do the final cleanup at the very end. Lovely. Okay. Much nicer. And even inside, it looks nice. But I wanted the beads pushing the panel accents inward. So that's first one done. We have 3 more to go. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is reassemble everything. We're a little bit tricky because we have so many things moving around. That's why it's nice to tack things or clamp things in place. See if we can get a couple screws in. Good. We have a nice gap at the front. Now it's just a matter of just spending the time and working at this until we have a complete structure. So we're going to get the tacks back in place on the exterior and then start working these corners in, all the flanges, all the overlapped areas, welding them solid. But that came out pretty nice. You can see the beading all the way through. We'll have a latch hoop here, because the latch has been installed down here. And we're consistent with our tape line across the bottom. All right, guys, so that's going to wrap up this episode of creating a 1940 Ford Coupe custom coupe trunk structure from scratch. Now, as you can see, there's a ton of work involved, but it came out nice. We have the clearance all the way through the front there after we trimmed up that front edge. We've got all the beadwork installed. And really the next step is to take and start finalizing all these overlapped areas and solidifying the structure. And then at that point, we can take and finalize the flanges. These areas here have to be disassembled. You have to get some epoxy primer in there, get the appropriate fasteners in there, get the original cylinders mounted so that everything is tensioned up the way it needs to be. And then we can finalize the perimeter flanges. This has to come up that 1/2 inch, which will create the space we need here, which will also create the space for the seal. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.